Well, this July went a lot better than last July's reading, so I'll take my wins where I can take them. Hello, everyone. Britton here, also known as Smoky Dude, and we are in August already. I can't believe it. You know, it's crazy how fast time goes when you're having a good time. But I had a very productive reading month this last July, and I even possibly might have gotten my almighty second 5-star rating. There's only been one 5-star rating this year, and that has been Kindred by Octavia Butler, which I read with the homie Darko. That was a lot of fun, and as you guys know, it kind of went down in infamy. Totally not jealous at all, Darko, that your video blew up while our conversation didn't. But I'm not hurt about that. My feelings are not hurt at all about that. What my feelings are hurt about are the books I did not complete this year. That doesn't make any sense. But let's get into the books that I did get to this month. So, yeah, let's get to it. One of the books I read this month was kind of one I just picked up off of a whim. I heard about this book from Thomas from SFF 180. This book sounded like it would tickle my pickle a little bit. That book is The Strange by Nathan Ballengrid. I've heard that Nathan Ballengrid, I know him more as a horror writer. He wrote North American Lake Monsters a few years ago. But he also wrote this, and it seemed like a type of science fiction I would really take to. Which is, you know, kind of a weird sci-fi western. It's basically True Grit on Ray Bradbury's Mars, if I could paraphrase Thomas a little bit there. But he turned me on to this book, and I quite enjoyed it. I thought this was really quite good. Really good prose. I thought the storytelling was pretty solid enough. There were some points with the characters I wasn't quite, jiving with, but I thought The Strange was a very solid book. It was pretty easy read for the most part. I completed this while I was down in Arkansas, and it took about how long did that take? A couple days, maybe? It wasn't very long. But really good stuff. Though, if you're one of those people who gets turned off by obvious inspirations, there are inspirations from like True Grit, The Martian Chronicles, and even Dune, as you can see right there. There's The Spice, except they call it The Strange in this. Pretty good. I liked it. I don't know if I liked it as much as Thomas did, and I don't know if I was as critical of it as my friend Jason was. So I would say it's a pretty light 4, probably a 3.5 out of 5 if I gave it a numbering. But yeah, Strange, it's pretty good. Check it out for anyone who's interested in it. Now we are getting into the second book that might have possibly gotten my second 5-star rating this year, and that is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. I'll try and keep my thoughts brief on this because I actually read this with a group of people such as Matt on Books, the homie Darko, Tori Talks, Joanna. We were on the Fireside Discord chat talking about this book. And this book is one of those books that like everyone and their grandma tells you to go read, and I can see why. This book is absolutely magnificent. Now you might think, because the book is majorly about these two guys, Carl and Gus, they're best friends, and they decide to go on this cattle run after their old friend, this kind of rascal named Jake Spoon, tells them that out in Montana there's a lot of great land out there. And Cole decides for some reason one day, why don't we do a cattle run? Now, I get that sounds really boring, but McMurtry writes these characters so well. He writes these characters with such depth and heart that it's never boring at all. Even the characters who are kind of the secondary, who aren't really involved, you really feel for them too as they get into the story. It also has probably one of my favorite characters I've read this year, and that is Augustus McCrae. That man is a straight-up legend, and he really is as good as advertised. I really love Gus. He's a great character. I also found one of my most hated characters of all time, and Jake Spoon. I hate that son of a bitch. He was just so... I've known a lot of people like Jake's, and if you've known a person like Jake, you'll know what I'm talking about. But just flighty, selfish, impulsive. I hate the bastard. But this was a really good book. And this was actually my first Larry McMurtry book. I have seen adaptations of his work. Like, I saw HUD, which is a fantastic movie. It has Paul Newman in it. Very different kind of actor. And I also saw Last Picture Show, which I thought was fine. It was just kind of... I won't get into that. But this is my first proper book I read from Larry McMurtry, and by God, what a book it was. Came out the same year as Blood Meridian, which I always think is funny. And one of these books won the Pulitzer Prize. I'm not giving away what it is. So go away. Next book I completed, this was a bit of a doozy, and that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norel. This took me 4 months to complete, people. 4 straight months out of my life. And it wasn't because this book was slow or boring or anything like that. It's just I kept getting distracted. I had a class in June. That took up a lot of my time. And I just couldn't find the right amount of time. But then I went out to Arkansas and started up at it again. And this is so good. I can see why so many people love this book. Neil Gaiman really loves this book. He's one of my favorite authors, so, he says it's good, I'm going to read it. But this book really left me in awe by the end of it because of the vision that was put into this and just the scope of everything. This is a really well done historical narrative. It's also a really great fantasy read. I love the lore in this. I'm a big lore, world building nut, and the lore in this book is phenomenal. The characters are great. I really love Strange and Norel. They're really great together. And, of course, they end up splitting up, and that's really entertaining as well. The only part, and what's most impressive about this book is that for as long as it is, it's, there's never a dull moment. It's a very dry book for sure, and my advice to people who would read this might be intimidated by the size and what it's about. Don't take all the lines or dialogue seriously, because there's a lot of really dry, very English humor in this. I won't say too much more about this, because I'm also going to be having a conversation with this, hopefully with Alicia, at Birdie's Books and Covers. I'm sorry if I butchered that. I'm kind of forgetting it offhand, but, this is a fantastic book, though, and I did write a review on my Goodreads already, so if you want to see my thoughts there. But this was a really good book, and I do hope to read it again, because this is one of those books where you really seem to have to read it again and again to really get a gist of it. But really, really like this book, and I'm definitely wanting to read it again. So I don't know when I'm going to do that, because it took me about 4 years to hype myself up into reading this book. Now, hopefully it won't take me 4 years to hype myself to get back to reading this book, but I would love to reread this book as well. And also, the magic in this is really well done, too. So, yeah, fantastic book. I can see why so many people love it. Is it as good as Piranesi? It's a lot different from Piranesi, but if you like Piranesi, I think you'll like this book as well. It's really quite good. And I'm glad that I waited. While I am sad that I waited a long time to read this, I am glad that now I have finally picked the time to read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I also see that the TV show is on YouTube, so I'm thinking about watching that soon, so I can give a little thoughts on how the TV show compares to the book. And I'm very much looking forward to that. And is it weird that even though I read this 1,000-page book, I want more out of it? So, yeah, this is definitely going to be a favorite of the year. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it for anyone who is interested in fantastic literature. So, yeah, I'll just put this down now. Last book I have is one I've been meaning to get to for a while. I was going to read this in June, and then I made a snafu with buying the wrong book, and that is The Profit of Ean by Dr. Philip Chase, Dr. Fantasy himself. I'll admit, the book hangover from Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell was kind of getting at me when I was reading this. So it took me a minute to kind of get readjusted to the characters and the world and what's going on here. But this one is basically the war book. It's really, really good. Another fine piece of modern fantasy, I think. if you're a fan of, there's not a lot of the religious angst in the first one. This is more of a war novel, and if you're more interested, and if you really like war stories, you'll really get a kick out of this. Again, I'm trying to keep my thoughts to a minimum here because with a couple of books, I'm going to hopefully have Dr. Chase on here, Dr. Philip Chase on here, to talk about this book soon. So I'm looking forward to that. But I really liked it though. I really especially liked the ending. I really liked that Philip, Dr. Chase, I really like that he doesn't end it, that he decides to tell the sort of classic fantasy conflict story in this one book, and it makes me really excited for what happens in the third one, because I'm really hoping that this third one will really be Philip's masterstroke, because he is a very good writer, I have to say. The prose in this is very evocative, very assured for someone, this is his second book. I'm very impressed. Philip, I am very impressed. But I mean, it is a typical fantasy story, but this book, as well as The Way of Ean, proves that you don't have to be entirely original all the time. That it doesn't matter. Tropes can be used well, and they can be used not well. And when you put tropes in the hands of an assured storyteller like Dr. Philip Chase, you're going to get a really good book. And there's also a lot more mythology and weird prophecy in this, so yeah, I love that. So there you go. In all honesty, I don't even know if I did Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Though it was kind of funny. When I was reading that, I thought a lot about Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, because like there's some bits of the magic where I was like, oh, that's interesting. Kind of reminds me of that. So yeah, like I said, the book Hangover from Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell really hit me there. So yeah. So those are the books I read. Movies and shows. Let's get into it. I saw Deadpool and Wolverine in the theaters because, well, I do like the first two Deadpool movies. The first one is still my favorite because I felt it just grabs that tone very well, the really irreverent humor, the meta stuff, and this like really like surprising amount of heart in a Deadpool movie because, Deadpool's a very irreverent, devil-may-care kind of character. And Wolverine. We get Hugh Jackman back. This film should be awesome, right? It's bad. It's so bad. Like I can't even be ironic about it. It's just I just wasn't jiving with it. Now I understand. The Deadpool films are not supposed to be taken too seriously. These aren't high art. I understand that. But at least try to tell a compelling story. This movie, I keep saying book. This movie feels like someone with ADHD made it, and they're just throwing as many ideas and jokes and references in it as possible without really coming together in a cohesive manner. It's kind of frustrating because I do like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, and he does do very well in the movie. This movie isn't all bad. It is bad, but it's not all bad. There was still some good moments in there. Like Hugh Jackman was not phoning it in as Wolverine. But yeah, this film it just felt like there wasn't a lack of cohesion. There wasn't really a lack of vision. There was a lack of vision is what I'm trying to say. And, it wasn't good. I just don't think it was that good. And generally, it was very disappointing because, I was actually looking forward to this movie. Now, is it X-Men Origins Wolverine levels of bad? I don't know if it's that bad, but it's not good, guys. It's basically everything that is wrong with the MCU at this moment. They don't really know where they're going anymore, and it's becoming even more apparent here. It's been kind of cursed, I have to say. Anyway, let's get into some stuff that I liked. I watched The Chosen with my dad this July, which is a Christian drama show which dramatizes the life of Jesus and the disciples. Now, before you guys roll your eyes and go, oh no, he's going to start preaching at us, don't worry, I'm not. It's a good show, though. I really like it. Really great acting, surprisingly. And also, and this always has kind of bugged me about biblical-related movies, they never get people who actually look like what they would have looked like during that time. In this show, they do. They actually get people who are like, who look the part, who look like they are at least somewhat Middle Eastern, which is nice because, Jesus was Jewish. He was from the Middle East. So it's always kind of, I mean, I don't mind, getting white people to play Jesus. I don't have an issue with that, but like, try to go more for authenticity once in a while. It's kind of frustrating after a while when you see they just get like a bunch of white people, which is not bad. It's just, it's kind of irritating. But it is nice in this show that they actually got people who look the part, who actually look like they would have lived in that time. And they actually look like Middle Easterners. And I think some of them are actually descended from the Middle East. I'm not entirely sure. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Really good show, though. I recommend it for people who do believe and people who don't believe alike. I think it's a really good show. Very well acted. Jonathan Rumi, in particular, is fantastic as Jesus. And I do think it might be the most human depiction of Jesus I've seen since The Last Temptation of Christ, which is one of Martin Scorsese's best films, one of his most underrated films, unfairly underrated films, I might say. But yeah, you can get it. I think it's free. There's this app called The Chosen. You can go find it. You can watch it. It's not very long. It's 4 seasons. There are only 8 episodes. I mean, again, if you're Christian or not, I'm not gonna try and force this on you. But if you want to watch it, feel free. It's it's really good. Lot better than I initially thought, because I've seen a lot of biblical related stuff, like the Bible and the Last Temptation of Christ, and even the infamous Passion of the Christ, which I won't get into that, but I've seen a lot of biblical stuff. It kind of interests me, to be honest with you. But this one really makes the disciples and Jesus feel like real people, and I always appreciate that. It really makes you care about them. Even though you know what's probably going to happen, you don't want it to happen, because you know it's going to happen, and it's going to really suck when it does happen. So, yeah, Chosen. Go watch it. And finally, I am still watching House of the Dragon. I actually finished it not last night, but the night before last. So I'll talk more about that in August, but do I really have to repeat myself here? It's been sort of a mixed bag this season. There have been people who've been calling this next season 8 of Game of Thrones. That's just ridiculous. But there's a lot of stuff in here that kind of bugged me a little bit, and it's not bad. It's definitely mid-tier, like 6 out of 10 if I could, or 3.5 out of 5, or even just a 3 out of 5. Like, it's not terrible, but there's a lot of stuff that they're throwing in here that just doesn't make sense. They haven't built up this part of their characters before, and it's just, there's a lot of really frustrating parts of this season that's been really bugging me. And then when we get to the end of the season, I'll get to that in August, but this whole season just feels like one gigantic cock tease. It just feels like they're really tickling your balls for season 3, and it's kind of frustrating, because I'm like, I want a cohesive story arc here, guys. That's what you should do in a TV show, right? Guess not. It's really quite irritating. Again, I have to compare this to season 1. I won't pretend season 1 is perfect, but at least there was a cohesive vision. This is where we're starting, and this is where we're ending. This season just kind of starts, and then it just kind of stops, and you're just, what was that? It just felt not like a waste of time, but it just felt really frustrating. It just felt it was just frustrating. Seriously, Westeros and I have the most abusive relationship in all of fantasy. I'm like, my God, I keep going back, even though it beats the hell out of me, and tells me I'm a whore. Anyway, House of the Dragon, it's fine. Don't listen to people say it's season 8 part 2, because it's not. But lot of stuff, boys. You need to clean up your act over there at the writing room. But yeah. So that's it. That's all I did in July. That's all I read and watched and completed anyway. I read more. But August should be a fun month. I'm reading a couple books right now. I am reading Moon Witch Spider King right now, which that's probably going to take up a lot of time during the month. And I am probably going to... I said I was going to do this last month, but I am probably going to catch up on some comics. So I am looking forward to that. So yeah, that's all I got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. You can find me on Twitter. You can also find me on Instagram. You can find me on Blue Sky, even though I barely post on there. You can find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews that are probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Discord if you want to hang out with me on there. I have a Discord page. I'll link it down below for you guys to come and join. Also, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. As my buddy John Minton likes to say, it feels good when you do it. And that is really all I have for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And until next time.